surprising and not that you had those experiences, right? Especially based upon what you've said so far. I think one thing that's showed up in my brain as we've been talking, which I've been trying to like synthesize into something more concrete, is the idea that there's this duality, or it feels like a duality, which is I think there's like a fear or I don't know where I went, a compassion fatigue. I don't know if I froze. Oh, there I am. That I think people have talking about this. And then there's this interesting problem of like, if we don't talk about it, then it can't go away, so to speak. So there's like it's like it's a
Paradox.
paradox. Yeah, it's a paradox. It's like no one wants to talk about it because there's this theory that if we don't talk about it, then we'll just treat each other in a more egalitarian way or something like that, right? Which superficially does make sense, right? If you don't think about it very hard. And that's why I think a lot of people adopt that posture because they don't have to think or feel or whatever, right? Which is fine. And I think that a lot of people maybe are not in the best headspace to do that kind of thinking and feeling, which whatever, meet them where they're at, right? But then like I don't know how we get to a different space if we don't have conversations. So I think the thing that's been super informative for me is your reaction to my childhood, right? Like it was, I didn't really know what to expect coming to chat with you tonight. It was definitely not my expectation that you would have the intensity of the reaction that you did about the fact that I grew up in the church that I grew up. Because to me, it was just like, oh, this is just, I didn't think twice about it. I had no particular opinion other than like, well, this is just the people I grew up with. And, they weren't particularly bigoted. So that feels good to me as an adult who's like in a minority of some sort, right? Like, I like the fact that I wasn't experiencing over prejudice as a kid about sexuality, right? That makes me feel good. But the reaction you had was like, well, are you sure? And I was like, fuck, is there something I forgot or something that I missed? Should I be more concerned about my childhood? I was like, well, no, definitely that wasn't my experience. However, it fucking sucks that people, I mean, it's not surprising that people use religion or use their religious power in that way. People use authority, right? I think all the time.
I learned through my research that slaves, black slaves with vitiligo, on
Uh-huh.
the one day of church services that would be allowed a week, the white pastors would preach to the slaves and bring up black people who have vitiligo and say that these people were becoming white. And that was like what they should strive for, is to try to become white by following their master's orders. Like, yeah. So that was the good slave who was like following their master's orders well and turning white.
I see. Again, it's both surprising and not given the things that you've said and your experiences. And I think it is unfortunate that uh, people can't tolerate this kind of thing. Because to me, it's just like, well, yeah, stupid people have existed in for all of eternity, and we've got like the word I would use is we've got a great weapon to divide people, which is race, right? And I think the reason that I really started out in the culture wars years ago when I first got on Twitter and Facebook as like an anti-woke person is I think I saw people using race as a weapon and using sexuality and using gender as a weapon to deal with their trauma. And like I have a problem with that as a clinician because I think there's tons of ways to deal with your trauma, and maybe using these concepts sociopolitically as a weapon doesn't actually help you heal, right? And so that's why I started out on that side of the spectrum, very staunchly anti-woke. If you go back through my YouTube videos, you'll see me say just hilarious things from an anti-woke perspective. And if you see me change over time, which is why I haven't deleted those videos, I'm not the same guy, right? Like I have a much more mixed opinion about so many things. I think the way I tend to live now is in this spirit of like there's a lot of pain and people are in most cases just doing the best that they can, and so I don't need to have a particular reaction about how people deal with their pain for the most
I
part.
think
You
that
know
is
what
a
I mean?
very good mindset to have, you know? Like, I mean, I think we got to be realistic about number one, first of all, kudos on your growth, brother. And I'm glad that you've documented it and allowed it and made yourself vulnerable to like allow other people to experience it, because that's one of the things that's most critical, I think, in, you know, in catalyzing human flourishing in general. I think I
Yeah.
talked about it earlier, the mistakes thing, and that I highlight them. So I love that you're doing that.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat here said growth is worth documenting and keeping traces of. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, I mean, nobody has to be perfect. I don't know why this idea of perfection, I don't like it doesn't make any sense. And listen, people used to tell me I'm perfect. Like, literally as a child, people would tell me that I was a perfect child, that I was so smart, that I was this genius, like I was a very precocious and like,
Yeah.
different kind of child. And so, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like people would say all these things to me. I never believed this stuff, brother. I never believed anything that people. I knew from a young age, and my mom is partially to thank for this, and her mom, because they said, and this is the thing they passed down to me, which is you're no better than anyone else, and no one else is better than
Mm,
you. Okay,
mm,
like that was the line, and
yeah. Yeah.
for me that made sense, on a number of levels, and I saw it reflected in the environment, but I also saw that a lot of people didn't believe it. People were
Yeah.
ranking each other, judging each other in all kinds of ways, and I decided very early on, very young kid, to be like, yeah, that's not what I'm gonna do because like I'm gonna live like in the world that actually as it actually exists. What other people want to do, they want to pretend that they're better than somebody else. You do that, like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
free, I'm not trying to control anyone else, but like for me, I'm going to exist in this world as if like I know that all human beings, there isn't one above another. Like that is not the reality of this scenario, of this life that we're living. And
No. No.
yeah, anyways, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully
I
one day
feel
we
you.
can unravel these human hierarchies, brother.